Hey race fans, thanks for joining us. Our weekly look back at racing heroes, tough guys, great races, great cars. And today, finally, we're getting to a great mechanic. Not just any mechanic, my all-time favorite mechanic, Bill Finley. He came from California. He was a sprint car driver. Came back with Roy Reed and started working on Indy cars. And by the mid to late 60s, he'd hooked up with Tassi Vatis, who owned some shipping lines. We called him the Greek, from New York City. He was a big midget racing fan. He wanted to have an Indy car. So Bill Finley became his guy because he met Finley and realized, my God, this guy is multi-talented and he's honest. And he's going to be my guy. So Tassi Vatis, and that's how it started Bill Finley's association. Gary Congdon, Wally Dallenbach, Sammy Sessions, Johnny Parsons, John Hubbard, Bentley Warren, Sam Posey, John Mailer, Steve Krisloff, they all got to drive for Bill Finley. And believe me, it was an honor to drive for Bill Finley. Yeah, it wasn't the greatest, it wasn't the most expensive team, they didn't have much of a budget. But what was so cool about Finley is what he could do with his own two hands and his mind. He was a welder, a fabricator, an engine man. He did it all. To really illustrate how he did it all, in 1973, Dan Gurney Eagle had taken the field by storm in the early 1972. Everybody had to have an Eagle or a McLaren. Finley decided he was going to build his own car. He had a shop, and his shop was his garage right behind his house on the west side of Indianapolis on Patricia Avenue. And in his shop was his son Tom. I guess that was his only full-time employee. Howie Furland, who was a machinist. And they built from the ground up with no aerodynamicist, no engineer, no wind tunnel, just Bill Finley drawing it out with a piece of chalk and using some drawings that he probably took a picture of the Eagle when it was rolling down the pits. They built an Indy car in about 3 months at 5432 Patricia Avenue in Indianapolis, Indiana. Well, it didn't make the race in 73, but in 1974 Johnny Parsons qualified for his first Indy 500 in Bill Finley's car, which we affectionately called the Fleagle. Since it was a little bit of an Eagle and a little bit of a Finley, it became the Fleagle. Now think about that. In today's world of humongous budgets and 20 guys on a crew, Bill Finley built this car with his own two hands, with a little bit of help, in his garage, in between eating lunch at noon and dinner at 5. He worked from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. every night, 7 days a week, just like clockwork. But in between, if you had a sprint car or a midget or a Formula Ford or whatever, and you crashed or you had a problem, it was like Grand Central Station. Everybody came in and asked Finley for help. He never said no. You need this welded right. I'll do this, I'll do this. I never saw him turn anybody down. I, of course, was the biggest pain in the ass he ever met. The dumbest person around a race car, he said, he'd ever met was me. And I had a Formula Ford and I had my midgets, and he put them back together for 10 years, and I drove him crazy, and he told me once, Christ, I don't work this hard for my kids. But I think he felt sorry for me because I was so stupid mechanically. And he also let me be a stooge on his IndyCar team, and I got to run the pit board, I got to be the vent man for the pit stops, and I got to help him drive the car to the races. And what was great about that was he had a blue pickup truck and an open wheel trailer. So we'd go to Ontario or Phoenix or Trenton or Pocono or Milwaukee towing this Indy car. And he's chain smoking on the left hand seat, Big Dumb Tex smoking a cigar on the right hand seat, little Robbie Miller in the middle seat with his Roy Rogers blanket trying to fend off all the smoke. And it was the greatest experience of my life. Those were the glory days of IndyCar racing, and the fact that in the 60s and 70s anybody could have an idea and try it. And Finley's ideas worked more often than not. And A.J. Watson was along the same lines, Grant King, different people like that. They copied cars and built them and didn't have big budgets. And Finley had so much talent. And he wanted to keep Tassi Vatis, so he cut corners and he'd sleeve blocks and he'd use old pieces. And nobody ever won a race for him. Bentley Warren was leading Argentina and something broke and he crashed. JP was going to win Phoenix for Bill and they didn't have an extra set of tires, so he ended up finishing third or fourth. It never happened. He didn't win a race. JP put his dirt car on the pole to Hoosier 100 and set a track record once it stood for a long time. But Finley was exactly what racing was about. Hard work, taking ideas, and just running with them. And he was just such a pleasure, and he was such a great practical joker. A.J. Foyt had a air conditioning system put in his garage in Gasoline Alley when everybody spent the whole summer in Gasoline Alley. Finley climbed up on the top, in between the two garages and turned the air conditioning system on his garage, so the next day it's 94 degrees and Foyt's going crazy looking for heater Bob because your damn air conditioner doesn't work. I'm sitting here sweating like a pig, and Finley and the boys are sitting over there in the air conditioned comfort, so he finally put it back. But the great Bill Finley story is we're at Michigan once for twin 125s. He said, "Kid, in between qualifying and the race, we're going to go back to Indianapolis and you're going to help me drive. I said, why is that, Finley? He says, you'll see. We get to Indy just before dark. He's got a skeleton key to gate 9A at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. That's right, our boy had a skeleton key to the speedway. We go in, we take a couple of big trash cans that say IMS on them, dump them out, take them to Finley's shop. He has me spray paint them black so we can get we cover up the IMS so you can't see who belonged to these trash cans. I take a nap. He welds them together and does what you have to do to a fuel tank, and suddenly you look up and this trash can has become an IndyCar fuel tank. He builds a couple, 4 legs for it. We load it in the back of his truck, take it to Michigan. Before the race starts, Roger Penske walks down and says, what's this? And Finley said, well, why do you have those big Indy 500 tanks? We don't need that fuel. This will get fuel in faster. It's easier to get to. It's easier to take to the races. 2 weeks later, Roger Penske had the same little small tank that Finley did. And I guarantee he spent a lot more than Finley did to get his. So, in the final analysis, Bill's been dead for about 20 years, and he didn't get the notoriety of George Bignotti or Clint Bronner or probably even A.J. Watson. But everybody that was around Gasoline Alley in the 60s and 70s knew what a star Finley was, and what a thinker he was, and what a hard worker he was, and what a pleasure he was to be around. And I am so thankful that he took pity on me back in 1972 and let me in his garage and pretty much let me into his life, because there's no more Bill Finleys around, ladies and gentlemen. I am just so thankful and so thrilled that I got to know him and I got to be part of his life. A little part, but I got to be part of it. Thanks for watching Racer.com. We'll talk to you next week.